What's up, guys? You might have noticed that I lost the mustache since the last video. I'm actually doing this in real time. I was just looking at myself in the recording, and I was like, "Wow, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much longer I can take this." I've done the little micro handlebar thing before, but I just don't have the upper lip real estate to make it work. So I gave it up. Well, that's okay. I still got the chin strap, but goodness knows, looking at it now, I'm not sure if it's gonna last again. So let's let's go look at passage 3 here. So there's the humanities passage. This can often be the hardest passage to get your head around because it's a little bit more conceptual, let's say. They're not talking about the Sargasso Sea. They're not talking about a narrative thing. It's conceptual. It's heavy duty stuff. This is even more complicated because if you notice, we have this little passage A, passage B thing going on. So it's a comparison, right? So in a comparison sort of passage, you have to think that some of the questions are going to be about A, some of them are going to be about B, some of them are going to be about both. As has been our tendency so far, you can read this the first time if you want. Again, these tests are freely available online, and I'm going to put the link in the description. But let's just take a look. So the ACT is nice because it goes ahead and explicitly says, okay, these questions are about question A, these questions are about passage B, and these questions are about both passages. So we're going to use the same sort of multiple choice arbitrage thought and try to find questions that we can answer quickly first, do those, and then worry about the stuff later. So thus I fell into surprise, line 46. When Bradbury claims thus I fell into surprise, he's most nearly referring to the, so 46, thus I fell into surprise, okay. The thus tells me that I have to point somewhere back here. Along the way, I sat me down to breakfast, lunch, and dinners with the long dead and much loved. Along the way, I came upon collided. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay. I feel like this is getting a little bit crazy, but we might as well just read through some of this. Not a day passed where I didn't show myself across. Okay. You know what? I'm going to skip this one because I'm pretty confused, and that's okay. Again, it doesn't matter when you answer these questions. You don't have to answer them in order. If you're having trouble with one, you might as well cut your losses. The more questions we do, the more we get familiar with these sections, the easier it's going to be to answer questions like this. Passage A indicates that Bradbury believes all beginning writers, all beginning writers think that they can. So this is a strong enough keyword for me to want to look at it. Beginning writers. Okay, like every beginner. I thought that you could beat, pummel, and thrash an idea in existence. So, writer, beginning writer, again, it has to be, you have to be conscious of these slant kind of keywords. They're not always exactly right out there. Let's see what we got. So beginning writers can, force an idea into creation. Look at the way he describes it here. Beat, pummel, and thrash an idea into existence. That's like forcing the idea into existence, right? Learn the nature of surprises. No, not there. Use one word as a catalyst for the story. This might be something that he talks about, but it's not in that, it's not what he's describing beginning writers think they can do. And same with J. Bradbury's claim, I would then take arms against the word or for it, line 12, most strongly suggests that during his writing sessions, let's just check this and see the context. I would then take arms against the word or for it and bring an assortment of characters to weigh the word and show me its meaning in its own life. An hour or 2 hours later, a new story would be finished and done. Total surprise, lovely. Found that I would have to work this way the rest of my life. Okay, so the word. What is the word here, right? Word association process. Walk to his desk, put down any word or series of words that happen along. Take arms against the word or for it. Okay, so he thinks of some idea, some word, and then when he talks about taking arms against or for the word, that basically says he wants to try to fight against it or support it in some way, right? Attempt to find one word that was the key to understanding John Huff. Okay. I mean, we're not even at John Huff yet, who's apparently part of this thing. Often rejected word as not being a catalyst for meaningful writing. This almost sounds tempting, taking arms against or for. Deliberately choose to write only about a word that inspired his fears. Okay, I didn't get anything about fears there. Feel as though he was struggling to find a word's significance for him. Okay. I like D better. Feel as though he's struggling to find a word's significance for him. Why is that? B, often reject a word as not being a catalyst for meaningful writing. Here he says that when he takes arms against the word or for it, he doesn't talk about failing, the word failing to be a catalyst, basically, right? He's just like, boom, I do this word, it works out, and no problem. So I think it's got to be D in this case. In the 7th paragraph of passage A, they're nice, giving us exactly where it is, 30 through 37. Bradbury explains his habit over many years as a writer as almost daily, so 30 through 37. Hardly a day passed I didn't stroll myself across a recollection of my grandparents' North Illinois grass, hoping to come across some half-burned firecracker. It's okay. People are just drenching sorrows. Again, you can pause this and read this if you need to. So he wants to stroll himself conceptually, because it's a recollection, across his grandparents' old place. So, okay, so he's thinking about what his grandparents lived, Looking and writing about objects from his childhood looking and writing about objects from his childhood, maybe. This talks about his childhood. That he had saved, not so much, right? This is actually just conceptual, kind of memory stuff. Wishing he kept more letters, no. Driving past his grandparents' property, again, this is not a literal going past the grandparents' property, rather thinking about the grandparents' property. He's strolling across the recollection. Passage A explains that when writing about the character John Huff, Bradbury had, so we've been through Passage A a little bit, and we haven't gotten Huff yet, so I'm thinking that Huff is probably going to be a decent keyword here. So let's see when he's writing about Huff. Okay, here's Huff. Along the way, I came upon collided through this word association process with old and true friendships. I borrowed my friend John Huff from my childhood in Arizona and shipped him east to Greentown so that I could say goodbye to him properly. Okay. So he borrows his friend John Huff from his actual childhood in Arizona and ships him east to Greentown. So this suggests that this John Huff was a person in his life, but he took some sort of artistic liberty, right? Placed John in a town in Arizona, so this is a reverse relationship, right? It's not that he's in Arizona. Bradbury actually knew him in Arizona, brought him to Greentown. Including John in stories about a town in Arizona, and stories about Greentown. Okay, kind of tempting, but I'm a little bit dubious about this town in Arizona thing. Move John to a town other than the town in which the real John Huff has grown up. I think this is probably right. He talks explicitly about moving him. Borrow John used as a minor character in many of his stories. Okay, this also kind of seems tempting. Let's read this again. I borrowed my friend John Huff from my childhood in Arizona and shipped him east to Greentown so I could say goodbye to him properly. Okay. Okay. So passage B is the fiction. Passage A is an introduction to the later edition. Okay. Let's take another look. Including stories about a town in Arizona and stories about Greentown. So here, again, the stories about the town in Arizona, that's dubious, so I want to get rid of that. Move John to a town other than the town in which the real-life John Huff had grown up. Yeah. Borrow John uses a minor character in many of his stories. I think the many of his stories part disqualifies this for me. This is one that's worth checking here, but I'm pretty sure the many stories in the town in Arizona. So let's look at 25 on the reading. Here we go. 25. It's going to be C. So that was the moving passage, or the moving answer, if I remember right. Yeah, okay. I still got it. Sometimes I get a little worried about this stuff, and I am doing this live, so sometimes these are tough for me to get. But I think it's important that you guys see the process, because a lot of these videos will just be like, oh, here's the top 10 tips to do the ACT, and really without the context of actually doing the problems, it doesn't really help. So my theory is that the more stuff you can see of like people actually solving these problems, the more you can think about the way these problems are set up, the better off you'll do. Maybe that's just an excuse for me to get on here and stream this stuff rather than trying to sit down and do some heavy video editing. But either way. Okay. 26 and 27 ask about passage B. So now we're on B. In the first paragraph of passage B, 52 through 63, the narrator describes Huff in a manner that... Okay, so let's look for descriptions of John Huff in the first paragraph. The facts about John Huff are simple and soon stated. He could pathfind more trails. He could leap from the sky like a chimpanzee. He could live underwater 2 minutes and slide 50 yards downstream from where you last saw him. Baseballs he hit in the apple trees. He knocked down harvests. He ran laughing. He sat easy. Not a bully. He was kind. He knew all the names of all the wildflowers. And when the moon would rise and set, he was, in fact, the only god living in the whole of Greentown, Illinois, during the 20th century that Douglas Spalding knew of. Okay. So I'm assuming that, he's actually not a god, right? He's a 12-year-old boy. Presumably, this is just Douglas Spalding thinks he's really great. Let's see which answer looks like that. Emphasizes John's physical strength and intelligence to indicate... Okay, John's view of himself? No. We're talking about Douglas's view of John. Exaggerates John's character in actions to reflect Douglas's idolization of John. I really like this one. Highlights John's reckless behavior to show that Douglas was most fond of John's rebelliousness. Not really so much reckless, it's like swimming and hitting baseballs into trees, like nothing too crazy. Showcases John's talents to make it clear why both children and adults admire John. Actually, no mention of adults there, and he's still talking about he and Douglas hanging out, so no. Within passage B, the image in lines 74 to 76 functions figuratively. Figuratively is an important thing here. So 74 through 76, it was such a fine day, and then suddenly a cloud crossed the sky, covered the sun, and did not move again. Oh man, this is really heavy, right? So he was speaking quietly, John, he's going away. So, it's a big emotional moment. And this is kind of like, it was a dark and stormy night, but in the sort of sad version, right? Cloud passing, a shadow passing across your face, actually, literally, right? John's leaving out story night was fitting, giving Douglas' sadness. I mean, no, this is still, I think, afternoon, right? Such a fine day, yeah. John's disappointment about moving was reflected in his mood all day. Suddenly a cloud. So the all day, it does not match up with the suddenly here. The mood of the day changed dramatically and irreversibly. I'm liking this one. The sky in Greetown became cloudy at the moment. Okay, this is not figurative, right? That's a literal thing. So it's got to be C. 20 through 30 ask about both passages. Both passage A and passage B highlight Bradbury's use of first-person omniscient, so to tell a story. So A is not a story. Satire and irony to develop characters. I don't really think he's using a lot of irony or satire in either of these. Both of these seem pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Not wholesome, but genuine is the word I'm looking for. Allegory to present a complex philosophical question. I mean, no, not in passage B. It's just a story about two boys. So by process of elimination, it's got to be J. Sensory details, imaginative description to convey ideas. That sounds plausible enough, but really, this is mostly I don't like F, G, or H. Based on Bradbury's description of passage A of this writing process, this is this whole words fighting for one another, right? Which of the following methods hypothetically depicts a way Bradbury might have begun to write the story in passage B? Okay, if you remember the process, he thinks about his grandparents' farm, he picks a word and starts writing about it, and then he's got a story, basically, right? So taking notes while interviewing old friends, no, this is all conceptual. Forming two characters, determining you'd like to tell a story about loss, then beginning to write a scene. No, this is not like the word association. Writing out the words train ticket and then spending an hour writing, promising, right? Outlining the plot of the story okay, no, definitely this. Okay, elsewhere in the essay from passage A, or from which passage A is adapted, Bradbury writes, was there a real boy named John Huff? There was, and that was truly his name, but he didn't go away from me. I went away from him. Okay. So in passage A, right? Passage A is talking about, this is how I write stories, and John. We answered this question earlier. That was like John Huff existed, but Bradbury kind of borrowed him to use something else. How do these statements apply to both the information about Bradbury's approach as a storyteller provided in A, and the story of John Huff provided in passage B? Okay. So it basically says that there was a real boy, and so this association was like maybe Huff. I don't know. But let's just see what the answers look like. They reveal that Bradbury believed that to surprise readers was a fiction writer's most important task. Absolutely not. They reinforce that Bradbury loses life experiences to create fiction. I'm liking this, but also alter those experiences as he pleases. Okay, plausible. Prove that Bradbury felt such pain over leaving John that he had to reverse events to be able to write the story. No. There's not such the pain here, right? And the reversal of events, I don't know. I don't think this sounds plausible to me, right? They indicate that Bradbury rarely uses life experience to create fiction. This actually goes exactly in the opposite direction of what's suggested here. It's got to be G. Okay, again, I think I skipped at least one. Let's see what I don't have circled here. Right. When Bradbury claims, thus I fell into surprise, he must really referring to the... Okay. With the long day, much love. I came on the old and best ways of writing through ignorance and experiment, and was startled when truth leaped out of bushes like quail before gunshot, blundered into creativity as any child learning to walk and see. Learned to let my senses of my past tell me all that was somehow true. So he fell into surprise, I think, because this is the writing method that worked for him, and it seems ridiculous, right? So the discovery for him that the secret to creative art pouring was to use a word associated method. I like it. Long forgotten experiences he would remember where he would talk with his childhood friends in person. No, I mean, this is more about the word stuff, right? This is what passage A is all about. It seems like unrelated. Realization that he wrote more effectively about his current experiences than his past. No, he's writing about past experiences, and that's the whole point. Several methods other writers taught him to help him write honest, authentic stories. Actually, he's talking about he just kind of stumbled into this method. So this is really more of a process of elimination again, but A also looked promising to us early on. Okay, so that's the humanities and the passage comparison. Again, these tend to be the tougher varieties. Wait, let me bring my face in, right? These tend to be the tougher questions on this reading passage. Something where you're like, okay, I've got A, I've got B, there's two things. I'm trying to think about all the different things on all the different tests. Like, there's two passages, what's going on? They're both different. One thing that I failed to mention, and should have done earlier, right? I talked about this a little bit earlier. Let me bring me back to the workspace. But they give a little bit of context right up here for how these two passages might relate to each other, right? So that's worth noticing before you go into the passage, just to see if you can get a little bit of context. Remember, use all the information that you can. Notably, again, I'm not actually reading this whole thing through, and I'm just going right for the questions and going for it. So I encourage you to, even if you don't use this method, even if you like the read, I like to do this going straight to the questions because you can't kind of infect your mind with all this other stuff that is not phrased in the question that they have here, right? If you are thinking about something else and then they ask a question and you kind of like think about a related claim, not something that the question asked, that can kind of mess you up. So always your choice. Try this out and see if it works for you. And I'll be back in another video with, the natural science passage, which is going to be the last one. So yeah, look forward to that. And remember, get that 36 and stay savvy.